Your Honor, I would move we suspend the rules and pass this on second and third.
Second.
We have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass on second and third reading. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5260 carries on second and third readings.
And next, I'm looking for consideration of ordinance number 5261, which would be changing the zoning district from agricultural to rural residential at the same address.
Your Honor, I'd move consideration of ordinance number 5261.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Do we have a short title on this, Beth?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5261 carries on first reading.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5261 on second and third.
Second.
Okay, a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5261 on second and third. Any further discussion? If not, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5261 carries on second and third.
All right, and next is consideration of resolution number 2013-27, approving the final plat of Calvert's Addition and its accompanying subdivision agreement.
I'll introduce resolution 2013-27.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Any discussion on this at all? Anything, Dennis, Trent, that we need to know? Everything in place?
Yes, ma'am.
Good to go?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, a motion with a second. Any discussion from this council at all? If not, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, resolution 2013-27 is adopted.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And next is a public hearing to consider a blight and substandard declaration for the area referred to as the northeast corner of 13th Street and Omaha Avenue. I will open the public hearing, and Courtney, I'll let you tell us about this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This came before you previously. You referred it over to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission.
Just to double check to see if the mic's on.
What's that?
Is the
Oh,
button
it
up? It needs to be up. It was on,
It was
okay,
on.
thank you.
Was on.
Okay.
Okay,
There you go.
So is it on now?
yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right. This came before you previously. You referred it to the Planning Commission for review. The Planning Commission on August 6th reviewed the blight and substandard determination study for the area at 13th Street and Omaha Avenue, and has recommended that the area be declared blighted and substandard. Everything should be in your agenda packet, but we also have Tom Higginbotham with Northeast Nebraska Economic Development District here to answer any questions specific to the blight study. If you'd like to come up at this time, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the reason for the blight study.
Council, any questions for Courtney while we have her here? Then Tom will let you tell us more.
Yeah, we did the blight study based on the, the state statute. It meets at least one of the objective criteria, the age of the residents. Residential structures, commercial structures is over 40 years of age. And then once it meets at least one of those, then we have to look at the subjective, and met 6 of those. Faulty lot layouts, inadequate street layouts, those types of things. Deterioration of some of the sidewalks, parking lots, curbs and gutters, those kinds of things. It's a little under 31-acre area. As you can see on page 11 is the conclusion based on our criteria. Based on our evaluation of those criteria, we believe that this area meets that determination. Exhibit 2 is a map that it really kind of depicts some of those interior lots. This is very similar to the area south of Omaha Avenue. that we did previously on the other corner. So, there's been some interest in redeveloping some of these areas. As those materialize and those developers, property owners, whoever wants to develop those, when they do their redevelopment plan, will include, you know, some of their, what they want to do, and if it involves in any of that interior land, you know, the streets, public access, those kind of things will be looked at. Right now, there's just personal easements to allow folks to drive across other people's parking lots to get to some of those lots, so. One thing the planning commission did ask me, is there any negative to this? In my opinion, no. All it does is allow for the development of the property. I mean, there's no negative effect on the current property owners, the current property taxes, the current values, or any of that. All it does is allow for development, which is a good thing, because the more development you have, the more you're gonna get on your tax rolls and property taxes and those kind of things, so.
Tom, how close does this get us to the ceiling if this were to pass?
You can only go up to 35% of the city limit acreage of blight and substandard. We're well below that, I believe. I can't remember the numbers. Randy has a spreadsheet on that.
I don't have those handy, but we're not
Way
getting anywhere
under.
close with this blight designation.
We're still under 10, if I remember right. Does that sound right? Are we over it now?
We're over it.
I
Are
thought it
we?
was pretty close, certainly under
Is it?
20.
I think we're 13 to 15% would be
Okay.
my
We're
recollection.
in that range.
Okay,
And the council also has the authority, once an area is completely developed, there's no more possibilities of tax increment financing, you do have the option to come back and blight and substandard, undeclare those areas, which would free up those acreage. So if this area gets fully developed down the road, after the bonds have been paid off down the road, and there's no more improvements to be done, then the council at that time, you know, could undeclare it and then free up those 30.7 acres.
Gotcha.
So.
okay.
And that's something that the city staff currently monitors. They monitor that stuff, you know, on a day-to-day basis, you know, as we move
And
forward.
we'll be probably sometime in this next year bringing forth the out blighting of some of these areas that have been redeveloped. The bonds have been paid off. They don't need to be considered blighted anymore. We'll out blight those, and that'll free up room to declare more areas blighted that need redeveloped. So that'll be something I anticipate coming forth this next year.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. Thanks, Tom. Anything else for Tom? Okay. All right. Anything else on this at all? If not, do we have a short title on this? Let's see, where are we? My fault. We're still in a public hearing, so with this, we just need to, there's nothing further on this, right?
There was planning
Close.
commission report.
There is? Okay, so I'll close the hearing. I'm lost. Where are we at? Number 26. Okay, my fault. Close the hearing? Okay. And you do have a planning commission report. Okay, my fault, guys. I lost my place there. We'll look to the planning commission report after the close of this hearing. Go ahead.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on August 6 to review the blight and substandard determination study for area referred to as northeast corner of 13th Street and Omaha Avenue. The study was prepared by the Northeast Nebraska Economic Development District. The study comprises 27 buildings in the northeast corner of Highway 81, 13th Street, and Highway 275, Omaha Avenue. There are 18 tax lot properties in the boundary, with 4 vacant lots and 3 parcels having land which has development potential. The average age for the property in the area is 44.38 years, which fulfills a qualifying condition for average age of a blighted and substandard property. Based on the study and its finding, the Planning Commission recommends declaration of the northeast corner of 13th Street and Omaha Avenue blighted and substandard.
All right, with that, Beth, I don't know that I actually asked for consideration of this resolution. Did I?
You can do it now.
All right, so I'm asking for consideration of Resolution 2013-28.
Your Honor, I
Ab-
move consideration of Resolution 2013-28.
Second.
Okay, a motion with a second. If no further discussion, then you've heard the Planning Commission report. I will ask that you vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, Resolution 2013-28 is adopted.
Okay, and next we'll move on to consideration of ordinance number 5262, which is amending section 2-105, 110, 111, 114, and 115 of the code to update amounts related to purchasing. I would ask for a motion.
Your Honor, I'll introduce ordinance 5262 on first reading.
Second that, Your Honor.
All right, we have a motion with a second. Randy, do I understand you're going to speak to this?
Yes, Your Honor. This is simply updating the dollar amounts we have in the purchasing code for inflation. We haven't done this since 1998. We have no requirements under statutes that we even bid items unless we're going to assess them. And then there's a requirement in statute if it's going to be over $30,000 and it's an item that would be assessed, then you have to bid it. We've tried to keep our formal bidding number close to that state statute amount. When they last changed statutes, they upped it from 20 to 30. We've still got 20 in our statutes. If you go back and update that $20,000 for what inflation has done since we last changed that in 1998, you're getting right under $29,000. So this would bring it up to a nice $30,000 number that would match the requirements that are in statutes for when we're going to assess a property. And it changes the other amounts up by 50% accordingly with the same inflation adjustment that we're making for the formal bidding. So that's all this does, is just simply update the numbers in our purchasing code to reflect inflation.
Okay. Any questions at all or comments to be made on this, council?
Your Honor, I've had a couple of constituents get a hold of me about this. I've explained to them that we do look at everything in the budget, so going from 20 to 30 is a kind of a technicality, as Randy said, they're raising the limits, because when you go out to buy a car anymore, we have to approve every car, because they're getting in the high 20s and low 30s, so I did point out that we look at these things in the budget, we talk about them, and it's not just somebody going with a free credit card out there. So we have looked at them, and 20 to 30 is, like Randy said, inflation. So they were fine with that. They just wanted to know the process.
Good comments, Dave, thanks. Any other comments, questions, suggestions? If not, Beth, do we have a short title?
Yes. An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Sections 2-105, 2-110, 2-111, 2-114, and 2-115 of the official city code to update amounts related to purchasing to reflect inflation, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
All right, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5262 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, if the council doesn't have any problems, I would like to waive the rules and pass ordinance 5262 on second and third.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass on second and third reading. Any further discussion? Okay, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5262 carries on second and third.
All right, next is consideration of approval of a request from Thomas M. and Lois E. Hall for a waiver of the required connection to the City of Norfolk sewer system for property at 2150 Sheridan Drive.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Second.
All right, we have a motion with a second. Trent, are you speaking to this?
Mayor and council, I can speak to this, and hopefully I get all this right, and if not, Dennis, you can fill me in here. We have a property that it's close to town, it's within, the outer edge of that property is within 300 feet of one of our municipal systems. The actual house is beyond 450 feet. So therefore, they can have a private septic system at that point. It is a fairly large parcel. the only way that we can bring, we do have some utility easements through, between houses, a 5-foot and a 5-foot, basically a 10-foot area where we can typically bring easements down. And it's beyond that requirement, so he didn't elect to do that part of it, so he wants a private system, basically. And by our code, we have to have a waiver for that with your guys' approval, and we didn't have an issue with that. John Koba dealt with that initially and had talked to me about it, so.
Jen, I gotta be honest with you, I don't know that I read this completely. Is this a brand-new house? Or
Yes.
or change in ownership?
No, it's new,
Brand-new house,
town
okay,
hall.
okay. Any questions, or?
Do you see any problems in the future being that close, and would they have to hook up later? Are we,
If our system gets larger and it gets closer, if if a system ever fails, then they have to hook on at that time. So, the unforeseeable future on how and where that extends to up in there, I don't have a perfect answer for that, but as it grows, typically our system grows, and, a rural septic system, typically 30, you might get 20 to 30 years out of it, depending on where it's at, sometimes longer, but typically 20 to 30. I haven't seen too many rural systems go beyond 40 or 50 years. There was probably a handful out there, but.
are they aware of that it could, as we grow, they could have to hook on?
Yes, I believe John Koba discussed, all those options with him on that, and he was aware of our code. And we had probably kind of pre-approved it, but there is a waiver that we got to go through this system on that. So, and we did tell him about that. So he is aware of the coming here.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that? Okay. Please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
And last is a consideration of ordinance number 5263, enacting new sections 18-51 through 18-54 of the city code to create a trail advisory board and to divide chapter 18 Parks and Rec into 2 separate articles.
Your Honor, I'd offer ordinance number 5263.
Second that, Your Honor.
All right, we have a motion with a second. Who's speaking to this? You want to talk?
Yes, ma'am.
Shane?
As council knows, there's great interest in developing further trails in our community and trying to wrap our arms around exactly where we need to start. I think there's some low-hanging fruit out there, just my own personal opinion, that maybe the community can start to look at. But in order to gain some consensus and to meet one of the council goals, in fact, is to establish this trail committee. The trail committee would be made up of members from the community, one from each ward would be voting members, and then also an extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction member. So there'd be 5 members that would have some voting rights to make recommendations to this body. Also, the park superintendent would be an ex officio member or non-voting member, along with a member from the NRD. We just think that's a good blend, a small, flexible group of folks that can look at our community as a whole, look at our existing trail systems and networks, and start to make recommendations to the council as far as developing a plan to address that. It's really such a large project when you take it all in, that we're really going to have to start like an elephant, eat it a bite at a time. So I'm hopeful that the members of this newly formed committee, if you approve it tonight, will pour in from the community, and the mayor can select those members, and then they can get to work looking at our trail system. So in the long run, it'll build some consensus for the community, is my hope, and I think the community's hope. So that's the goal.
I will tell you, this is probably one of the groups that I've had more interest in across this whole entire community. And let me tell you, there's so many different visions by different community members. So I think this is the right thing to be doing. Obviously, the final decision, though, is always made by this council. So, but I will, for those of you that are within the public that may have an interest, I'm going to suggest you call the city office, and probably Deb Johnson will be the one that will be taking some of those names. We'll let her know she would be, so.
Sure.
There's still some very interested folks out there, so. Any other comments or questions or discussion by council?
Shane, and those folks would then report to the full council or to the subcommittees, or how's that gonna work?
They'd report to a subcommittee,
Okay.
first of all, to address any concerns and try to get elected official input on that at that level, and then those recommendations could come forward to the full council. At the end of the day, trails are expensive, and trails are wanted by the community. So we have to, again, take a bite at the apple one at a time, and really identify the trails that are low-hanging fruit, and then the trails that are high-hanging fruit, and start to develop a plan to put resources to it. Local resources, private-public partnerships, grant opportunities on the federal level. There's many grant opportunities on the federal level, but any grant opportunity on the federal level always comes with a whole lot of strings, for lack of better words. There's many regulations you have to jump through. So we want to be able to have this committee use them as kind of a buttress device to help us to garner the ideas, so we can go after a large grant to focus on a large project. I think some of the smaller, in my opinion, again, there's some opportunity that perhaps some of the lower hanging fruit of our trail systems in the community can be plucked here locally through a private-public partnerships, is my hope, and I think the committee will start to see that. Staff is developing some potential options for the committee to look at right out of the gate. And then at the end of the day, we have to apply some dollars to meet those goals. But the mayor and council established that as one of your goals. You established trailheads as the initial goals for trails, which we're starting to develop, and this would buttress that as well. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mayor, I'd add that, like you, I'm supportive of this effort. I think it's an important first step to creating an attainable plan for furthering our trails development in the community. I had one question, Shane, on the timeline of this. What would be the hope for getting this committee formed and up off the ground?
I know the mayor's been getting quite a bit of input on suggested names. We have a group of folks the active folks that have been looking at trails, really seeking out those individuals that want to be part of the committee. And it's going to be, you have to make some hard decisions there. All the meetings that I've gone to, I've tried to encourage them that we don't want any hard feelings developed because they're not selected for a committee. But for the most part, all the people that I've encountered out there that have interest in trail have been real energetic, real positive, and understand that not everybody can be on the committee. But to answer your question directly, I would hope we could have names to this council by the next council meeting is the goal. If we can, it'd be the next, but we want to do it as quickly as we can so we can get started. If you have an active committee, it ties right into your grant applications too. It's one of your your points you get selected for if you have an active committee. So it just buttresses our ability to get grants as well, and really starts to give us, this council, some consensus building opportunities with the community.
One question, and I'd like to say too, I'm very supportive of this. Great, it's an opportunity for Norfolk to, step up to the next century, basically, 'cause this is what people want. However, you talked about, how do you establish something like this right away? You've got a committee talking to a subcommittee, but are we initially gonna try to do grants? Or are they gonna have a dollar amount in front of them that says, okay, you've got 200,000 to put towards?
Well, that's a good question. For
without,
instance, in the upcoming budget in 2013, 2014 budget, there's a line item of $221,000 for the potential to put additional trails at Skyview Park, which is a fantastic idea. But I think there's other opportunities out there that this council could choose to use that $221,000 or parts of it in other places in the community to maybe pick some of the low-hanging fruit that I think is available to us to help expand some of the existing trails in other parts of the community, for instance. So those kind of things, I think this committee will be able to work through with a subcommittee of elected officials and make a good recommendation. And so next year, if you approve that budget, you'll have $221,000 as sort of a placeholder that may be able to apply it at Skyview, or parts might be at Skyview, and parts might be at Tazuka, or parts might be on the levee control, or or the Cowboy Trail, or there's lots of places we could put that money and expand our trail network. So they would have some ability to spend some dollars next year if you approve the budget as been placed in front of you preliminarily already, so.
Right, thanks.
Any other questions or comments, council? Okay. Short title, Beth?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to enact new sections 18-51 through 18-54 of the code to create a Trail Advisory Board, to divide Chapter 18 Parks and Recreation into 2 separate articles, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5263 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I'd like to suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5263 on second and third.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass on second and third reading. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5263 carries on second and third.
Okay. Seeing nothing further on the agenda then, we're adjourned.